Y'all, welcome back to my channel. I hope that you all are doing well. If you are new here, make sure you go ahead and subscribe. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you all so much for supporting me along this journey. Make sure y'all click that notification bell as well to stay up to date on the latest videos. Is the pros and cons of living in an African country. I wanted to say the pros and cons of living in Africa, but we know Africa is a continent, and I specifically live in Senegal. I've been living here for 9 months now. Like 9 months, y'all. Time really does fly. And if you have a dream, you have a vision, you have a goal, make sure you stick to it, put your plan together, and don't let anybody deter you from what you know is in your heart. Sometimes that's the best way to follow your heart. Of course, you want to make sure that you have a plan set in place, but sometimes logic is the killer of our dreams. Sometimes logic can be the killer of your dreams. So, you know, that whole idea of walking by faith and really having the courage to do something that has been put inside of you, you really yield that magical infinite power that's within you, and kind of like go with it and let it flow. So let's get into some cons of living in an African country. I would say some of the cons for me of living in an African country has been, one, as like a foreigner or a person who's not born here in this country, specifically Senegal, you know, people can kind of like spot you out. Like most people say like, oh, I thought you were Senegalese, but for the most part, like once I speak, people know that I'm not from there. Even if I'm like speaking Wolof or whatever, or trying my hand in French, I try more Wolof than French. So that's one big thing too. Like the national language here is French and Wolof, and I don't speak any of those languages fluently. I am working on Duolingo for my French, and I'm learning Wolof just through friends and family. But people knowing that you are quote unquote a foreigner is kind of like, don't get me wrong, they're very kind, very sweet, very hospitable. Like Senegal is known for hospitality. Teranga, that means hospitality. But when you come to a African country, sometimes people can think, oh, well, you're just a tourist, and they try to exploit you, like try to raise the prices because, you know, they're trying to make a little come up really quick. So, you know, you got to really like go into it with the mindset of, you know what the prices are, you know how to bargain, you're willing to bargain. Sometimes it is tiring, like taking taxis and trying to bargain with people, but Senegal is becoming very progressive. They use Yango, and Heach is kind of like our Uber and Lyft. Like I live here in Senegal, but once you start to like speak the language of the locals, then they start to see your face and get familiar with you in the community, then they're more likely to treat you as their own. Lucky for me, I have a family here. One of my godsons' family lives here in Senegal, and they're Senegalese, and so I had them to kind of like coach me into my first few months of living abroad. So shout out to the Jahate family. Y'all are the best. I love y'all so much. So yes, that was one of the big cons in the beginning. Just being exploited, feeling like I was more prone to just higher prices and, you know, unfair treatment when it's time to pull out my wallet. But a pro on that side was I did have family here and new people that kind of helped me along the way. So if you are thinking about going to an African country, maybe building a network before you go would be very beneficial for you. Another con can be, I think we have like simple luxuries, specifically speaking about in the US. It's just like certain simple luxuries that you might not think about on a day-to-day basis. Like sometimes having like hot running water. Now there are places that have hot running water. There are buildings that have hot running water. Those buildings are usually a little bit more expensive, but and they do have running water here in Senegal and where I have stayed at in Chess and now Dakar. But like just that as a simple luxury, like always having hot running water. I like hot showers. Most women, we like hot showers, so that was kind of like a con, but I've gotten used to it. And then when it's a little bit colder outside, you do it the old-fashioned way. That's why I love growing up in the South and like going down to my great grandma's house in the summertime, because like sometimes we would have to boil our water. Like in the summertime, if you wanted like a hot bath, sometimes you would need to boil your water because it was only cold running water. And so those little things kind of like prepared me for now, so it's not so much of a shock. And I have lived and visited other African countries, so that like simple luxury or like certain little just knickknacks that you might be used to, they don't have it here. So it's just like getting your taste buds readjusted and missing certain things that you might have had available to you in your home country. So on the flip side of that, a pro is like the natural food. Like in America, I'm pretty much like vegetarian. I was vegan for a while, then I went to like vegetarian, pescatarian. On the continent, y'all, I be eating. I'm like a flexitarian. Like I'll do, some weeks I might not eat any chicken or beef or whatever, but for the most part, I still partake in it. Generally, that's a lot of the meals. They do have meat in a lot of the meals, and honestly, it do taste much better. Anytime I come to the continent of Africa, I have eaten meat, and it be so good. Like it be good, y'all. So I will say on the flip side of not having certain little things, it's more natural foods, because it's like the process of the animals, they're not going through all that trauma and those factories and getting all the stuff pumped into them to make them last and all that. It's more natural, more halal, especially here in Senegal being a predominantly Muslim country. So when they sacrifice or kill the animals for eating, it's done in a halal way where the animal doesn't go through such a rigorous suffering process. Say another con, it could be a con, just like certain infrastructure, like in some African countries. Now don't get me wrong, there are places where, especially in the cities, where it's very modernized and the infrastructure is on point. However, like I noticed here in Senegal, there's still like a lot of dirt roads and it's just like dust everywhere. So if you're a person with allergies, like just keep that in mind, because it's like the ground mostly is of sand, and so sand, dust is just like it's everywhere here. So that could be a con for you as well. Just something to think about. And of course, again, it's not all African countries, and it's not every place in the country that you might choose or your destination, but that can be something that is taken into consideration. And then one of the pros I will say is representation, like culture, like being in a place where it's like beautiful black people, African melanated people, like everywhere, and your advertisements, just like it's so much representation. And I think for those of us who might live in Europe or in the States, like the representation, I think is starting to get better, but for so long we didn't see ourselves represented in media, whether that be TV, advertisement, billboards, etc. So that's one thing I love about living in an African country. You gonna have your melanated folks everywhere around you. Now, certain African countries you might go to, like when I worked and lived in South Africa, there are more of a mix in certain areas, especially like in Cape Town and stuff. But here in Senegal, like you have your communities of people, but for the most part, you are going to get a heavy representation of yourself, speaking as a African American, or a black person that grew up in America, melanated person that grew up in America. It's so many different terminologies now. We ain't supposed to say this and say this, and but y'all feel my drift. So another pro, which has been like probably the number one for me, I don't know why I didn't leave with this one, but when people ask me like, why don't you live in America, why don't you want to go back to America, one of my first answers is always the gun violence. Like, and y'all know, like, I have a concealed carry, I carry in the States. However, it's just like, it's just too stressful. Like, the gun violence, just never knowing when somebody about to shoot up something because they upset. And so that has been a pro living in an African country. Now, on the flip side of that, a con is that, I don't feel like the people are as liberated with certain rights and how they have the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression. But at the same time, it keeps like certain violences controlled, especially gun violence. And so that has been a pro for me, for sure, 100%. Another con, or just an adjustment, especially if you are a single person or you're young and you're doing something different, moving out of your home country. Sometimes you can miss your friends and family. You can miss the things that are familiar to you, the places, certain things that you used to do. It can be a con in some ways if you are a person that like gets really lonely. I'm an only child. I grew up as an only child. So for me, it's like I'm kind of used to navigating the world like by myself, aside from like growing up with my mom and visiting family and stuff here and there throughout the summer. But so for me, it's kind of like, it's just an adjustment as far as like, sometimes you miss those that are closest to you. But on the flip side of that, the pro is like you learn and grow exponentially. Like, the things you learn about actually living in another country, in an African country, you learn so much about yourself. And for me, it's the sense of like deep rooted, like my soul just like vibrates when I'm on the continent. Like, I've been traveling to Africa since 2014. That was my first time coming to Africa. I went to Ghana with the YALI program, Young African American Leadership Initiative, through my university, my alma mater, Howard University. And it was like my soul, when I touched down, I was like, wow. Like, and they were just all like welcoming, like, welcome home, welcome home. So it was so beautiful. And then after that, working and living in Cape Town, South Africa, and visiting Nigeria with one of my co-worker family, and then going to Tanzania a couple years ago, so with one of my best friends. So I've had that experience of being able to like visit other African countries and regions before moving here to Senegal. And honestly, Senegal was not like a place that I was like, oh, I'm gonna move to Senegal. It kind of happened. It was just like divinely ordained, and I'm so grateful for that. So yeah, there are a lot of things to take into consideration if you are thinking about moving into an African country. But if it's been something that's been on your heart, something to do, like I say, make sure you save up, have a little money stashed away, and try it. Like, what do you have? Think about, what do you have to lose, and then even set the money aside. When you're manifesting what you want in your life, think about, if money was not an issue, if money was not a problem, if money was not a factor, what would I be doing and where would I be? That's how I started to began to manifest moving to the continent of Africa. And I just set those things aside. Like I said in the beginning, sometimes logic can be the killer of your dreams. Sometimes logic can be the killer of your hope and aspirations. And it's not to say just be all willy-nilly and, oh, like I'm just gonna flow with the wind. And I know sometimes my life can seem like that, but I also am an organizer and a planner. So, you know, I do make sure I have some type of structure in place, even though I know that that may change along the way. So I say that go for it, like go for it. And I'm not on this whole like everybody should move and everybody need to go out, because at the end of the day, I know that I was born in America. My roots are in America. At the end of the day, like, multiple generations, my great grandmother is still living today, and you know, my family generations have been in the Carolinas. And so for me, I know that at the end of the day, for everybody, it might not be what you need to do. And I will say this, Africa is not for everybody. A lot of people, you know, they on their go back to Africa tip, and some people just ain't cut out for it. I'm telling y'all, it ain't for the weak. Especially some countries are a little bit more easier to integrate into, especially like if they speak English or what have you. Senegal, they speak French and Wolof. I mean, you get some people who are practicing their English and they like to speak English or try to, but for the most part it's French and Wolof. So that in itself was a whole different, it was a culture shock, you know, for me. But again, like I said, I had people to kind of help integrate me within my first few months. But yeah, it's not for everybody. It ain't. A lot of people feel like they cut out for it and want it, and then few months they be one way back, you know. And sometimes it's because of money, like because that having that income, that steady flow of income, it can be very challenging if you do not have that steady flow of income already, or have a profession that is definitely needed and can be lucrative for you while here on the continent. Well, I hope this video has been helpful. I know I kind of like threw pros and cons all around mixed up in there, but this was just like just a one-on-one conversation. It's been a minute since I've done like my one-on-one talks with you all, and a lot of people always ask me like, how is it living there, and you know, what made you make the decision and everything. So I just wanted to kind of put this video out there. If you are thinking about relocating to an African country, put in the comments below what country you're thinking about. Do you have friends and family there? If you already have relocated to an African country or a country outside of your home country, how has that experience been for you? What have you learned? How have you grown? What tips can you give to other people who may be wanting to make that move? Well, again, thank you all so much for tuning in with me. Make sure you all like, comment, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace.